Welcome to the 2024 year ahead horoscope for Leo, Sun, and Rising. Now, of course, you can watch this for your sun sign or any other placement that you want to, but that's specifically tailored for Leo Rising. So let's go ahead and get into it. Pretty interesting year for the Leo Risings. The way I've been trying to explain 2024 is a build up to 2025. That is the easiest way to make sense of it. But before we begin, I'm going to go over the major transits of 2024, just so we have a kind of an idea of what we're looking at in just the general overview. But I did do a general 2024 overview. Make sure you watch that video if you really want to get my synopsis on all of the major transits that are happening throughout the year. But the first major thing we have going on is Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. This is probably a big deal for you guys because it's in your 7th house of relationships. Now, that happened in 2023, but it went back into Capricorn for a good majority of the time. Pluto's going to go into Aquarius again in January on January 20th. It's going to be there for a long time. Then in September, it will go back into Capricorn for about 5 seconds. But then when we get to November 19th, Pluto will officially move into Aquarius and stay in Aquarius, and it will not go back into Capricorn. And we will have Pluto in Aquarius for the next 20 years. So it's quite a major shift. Then we have the best transit of the year. That is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. This is happening on 4/20. Super easy to remember. This is especially good for you guys. Then we have Jupiter ingressing into Gemini, May 25th. Jupiter moves into a new zodiac sign once every single year. This is going to be pretty decent for you guys. It'll be a lot about socializing. Then we get the Venus Cazimi in Gemini. A lot of Gemini stuff coming up on the late spring, early summer. So a lot of socializing, a lot of being with friends. But we get this Jupiter-Saturn square, and this is kind of like the big meta transit for this year in terms of like the big picture stuff. So it's not as simple as you will be socializing. There will be more to it. We will talk about that. But we get two major transits of that of August 19th and December 24th. We get a third one in 2025. So this isn't the end all be all, but this is kind of a bigger deal. We'll talk about it as we go along. And then, of course, the Mars retrograde in Leo and Cancer on December 6th. Now, this will really continue into the beginning of 2025. And that's really how we get into 2025. This is going to be a little rough for you guys, but hey, you out of most zodiac signs get a lot of really good things this year, so you might have to take a couple of L's. But before we move forward, make sure you like this video if you're liking the content that you are seeing. Comment below. I want to know what your favorite month is going to be. I want to know what month you are not looking forward to. My guess is your favorite month is going to be April and May, and your least favorite month is going to be December. But also, if you want to keep up to date with how all of the transits are affecting your own personal planets, go ahead and go to my website and download my transit calendar for both iCalendar and Google Calendar. As you can see on my phone here, these little orange marks are representing when a transit is hitting something personal in my birth chart, custom to my birth chart. So you'd put in your birth chart information, and you're going to get a calendar file that gives you dates and times and even interpretations of when a major transit is hitting something in your natal chart. It's only $20 and it helps support the channel as well. If you want to support the channel, just like and comment and subscribe. But I also have a Patreon where I do live streams, Ask Me Anythings, monthly rising sign horoscopes. But of course, if you want to know exactly what the next year is going to look like and even the next couple of years are going to look like specifically for you, consider booking a consultation. Again, all of that is available in my website at the description below. So let's go ahead and get into it. So January, we're starting January off with Mercury stationing direct at the very first of the month. Now, I'm personally really looking forward to Mercury stationing direct, not because, Mercury's been retrograde, but just when we start 2024 on December 31st, Jupiter stations direct, and then on January 1st, Mercury stations direct. And every single planet will be moving forward at the very beginning of the year. So this is like a nice just start to the year where everything's moving forward and Mercury being direct. But it's stationing direct in your 5th house of creativity, love, romance, sex, children, hobbies, things that you're interested in. And as Mercury's been retrograding there, it was retrograde both in your 6th house of work, health, routines, day-to-day activities, and pets, in your 5th house of like creativity, love, romance, sex, pleasure. So there's this kind of like delay, maybe you were partying too much and it affected your work and you need to redo your schedule. And then you kind of re-examined like what you're partying or what your interests are, especially with your friends. That would have been a big part of this Mercury retrograde. That all is over and we finally get to move forward. Then we get to January 4th, and this is when we have Mars ingressing into Capricorn. This is for the general view of January, it's very just hustle and grind, but that's very specific to you guys too. Something I wanted to mention before we go any farther is, in order to better understand how a transit is going to affect you, it's really crucial to know if you are a day chart or a night chart. And I have videos about this. If you go to my YouTube channel and you go to informative videos, I have a couple videos that I talk about the difference between day and night charts. But essentially, if you're a day chart, which means when the sun is above the eastern horizon and the western horizon, so look at the ascendant and the descendant. If the sun is above that, you're a day chart. If it's below it, you're a night chart. This, if you're a day or night chart, differentiates which planets are more better or worse. And so we have the two malefic planets. So that's Mars and Saturn. If you are a day chart, Mars is a little bit more problematic for you, and Saturn is a little bit better for you. Versus if you're a night chart, Saturn is a little bit worse for you, and Mars is a little bit better for you. So I say that so you kind of have some context of, what we're looking at, if it's going to be quote unquote good or bad. So Mars moves into Capricorn. Mars is about fights, conflicts, ambition, energy. It's exalted in Capricorn. So it's just like there's high energy. There's a lot of action going on. Yeah, there might be some fights and conflicts, but like for the most part, we like Mars in Capricorn. But it's going into your 6th house of work, like actual work and labor, health, pets, routines, coworkers. And so as Mars goes into Capricorn at the beginning of the year, it's hustle time. You might have some issues with pets. You might have some issues with coworkers, but for the most part, like you're really busy, you're taking on a lot of work, and it's just kind of go, 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 very hustle grind. But that brings us to the 20th, which we have Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. Now, this isn't our first Pluto in Aquarius transit. Again, we had Pluto go into Aquarius originally last year between March of 2023 and about June of 2023. And I want you to think about what was going on for you in relationships at that time. I've talked a lot about Leo risings over the past few years having a lot of difficulty in relationships, especially in 2021 and 2022. That really subsided in 2023. But Pluto being there, I mean, Pluto rules power, corruption, fear, transformation. And, over these next 2 decades as Pluto transits your 7th house, long story short, there is a very big transformation happening within relationships. And I know that's kind of a vague term, but it's like, and I can't explain what 20 years are going to do to you in terms of relationships. But that's just, I'm just reading the chart, okay? Now, I'm going to pull up the chart in a second, but as Pluto moves in there is a vibe shift with relationships. Pluto does rule power and like empowerment, but also like fear and corruption. And as we get into February, this is where you're going to see this get highlighted. And I'm going to pull up the chart in just a second, okay? So the first thing that we have going on in February is Mars is going to make a conjunction to Pluto. And again, everything in February is happening in your 7th house of relationships. So this is your spouse, this is your girlfriend, this is your boyfriend, this is any also major individual in your life. Like it doesn't have to be a romantic partner. 9 times out of 10 it is, but this could be just any significant individual in your life. Mars is going to go into Aquarius. Now, Mars is, again, fights and conflicts and inflammation, heating, separating. And as we get to February, Mars will ingress into... Oh, I should probably do a week here. There we go. Mars will ingress into your 7th house, where there will be a little bit more inflammation and fighting and heating up regarding relationships. But Mars conjoining Pluto is like a power surge. Like Pluto is, again, like power and fear, and Aquarius is like society and groups of people. And like a lot of Leo risings are very like, like older, more mature people. Aquarius, like very kind of like stoic almost in a sense, maybe even like outcasts. With Pluto being there and then Mars conjoining Pluto, like Mars separates and cuts, right? So this could even also entail like a breakup, but that's not always the case. So like just take that with a grain of salt. But Mars conjoining Pluto is like a big power struggle with relationships. Like there might be something where if you are dating someone, like a power dynamic gets revealed that might be hard to balance or hard to figure out. You might feel disempowered by the relationship, or you might feel really empowered by the relationship. But like the power dynamic, and the thing that I've been saying for every sign is like, this is kind of like a revolution, like, or like a revolt almost. Like I'd beware of fighting with a partner. And so that's how we kind of start February. Now, what's also interesting about this is Mars does rule your 4th house of home and family and living situation. So this could even be a major like power thing when it comes to like a parent, or if you guys are talking about living together or whatever. But Mars also rules your 9th house of social media, publishing, broadcasting, higher education, spirituality, astrology, religion. And so these two, contexts, so living situation, home and family, far distance travel, higher education, that conjoining Pluto in the 7th house is like those two topics might create a lot of tension within the relationship. But the next thing that we have going on in February is Venus is going to conjoin Pluto. Now, Venus is about fun and connection and romance and indulgence, right? Still in your 7th house. And Venus conjoining Pluto is like, again, corrupted, like romance or very empowered by feelings. It's very fun, but it's also very powerful. It's like while Mars being there is more fights and conflicts, Venus is like more fun. So look how much stuff is happening with in your 7th house. Like the easiest way to, I shouldn't say the easiest, but like a very general way to read this is there's a lot of relationship stuff going on for you guys in the beginning of February. The sun is there, which is your ascendant ruler, and it's in detriment in the 7th. So there is a lot of like low energy there, or like your energy is very dictated by the relationship at this moment. But Mercury is there. And once Venus comes into the picture, Venus does rule your 10th house of career. And she also rules your 3rd house of neighbors, siblings, short distance travel, communication. And as Venus conjoins Pluto, this is kind of like, I almost wonder if there's like a relationship related to work, because the 10th house rules work and career as well as like bosses. And that's conjoining Pluto, where there might be this like fear around your boss, or this like even a relationship with, I wouldn't even say like a coworker, but some sort of like bigger, like dynamic relationship thing happening at work where like you feel disempowered or you do feel empowered. It's a two-way street here. It's just depending on the context. So Venus conjoining Pluto is having fun with it though. Like with Mars conjoining Pluto, it's like you revolt, like maybe you just kind of like, say something, you have to kind of like maybe blow up in your partner's face a little bit. And then Venus here is like, okay, well, that kind of felt good. Like it feels good to stand up for myself, or it feels good to take on that power. Or again, maybe your partner's being a lot more supportive and you feel empowered through that. It's kind of a hard thing to like just generally like delineate for you guys. You just have to look at the context and add it into your own life. But then that brings us to the next thing, which is going to be Venus conjoining Mars. Now, this happens on the 22nd. Again, this is still in your 7th house of relationships. And this is like dramatic, like drama fun, like spicy fun, like not forbidden fun, but kind of like, teasing fun, if that makes sense, like teasing flirting. And so as Venus conjoins Mars, I mean, the one thing to look at too is this is your 9th ruler of, publishing, broadcasting, social media, higher education, spirituality, religion, and your 10th ruler of career conjoining in the 7th house of relationships. So there seems to be like these two parts of your life meeting together through a vessel of someone else in your life. But it's also your 4th ruler of home and family and parents, and your 3rd house of like siblings, neighbors, aunts, uncles, cousins, meeting together in the relationship. So there seems to be like a lot of emphasis on other people, specifically individuals, either from a workplace or an education place or from your local community and family members. But just a lot of action and energy going on here. That leads us to the last thing of February, which is this Mercury-Saturn cazimi. Now, you got to kick up my legs for this one. Okay, if you don't know what a cazimi is when a planet conjoins the sun or the sun conjoins a planet. Every planet has a cazimi at least once a year. And what a cazimi is like that planet's birthday. It's that planet starting over again, moving on into a new chapter for that year. It's its relationship to the sun, its synodic cycle. Now, Mercury, we get like 6 to 8 cazimis a year because of its retrograde phase and everything. Now, Saturn, we only get like 1 cazimi a year. But these are both happening at the same day, and they're happening on top of each other, like in the same house. This is all happening in your 8th house of other people's money, death, debt, inheritance, taxes, and there seems to be a lot going on here. So let me pull up the chart so we can actually delineate it a little bit better. Here we go. Whoops, that went to Virgo rising. So the thing is here, let's just go over the Mercury cazimi. For one, Mercury rules your 11th house of friends and community and networks, and it also rules your 2nd house of money. Now, Mercury will go cazimi in Pisces where it's in detriment. Mercury doesn't do well in Pisces. But when we do have a Mercury cazimi, this is like a light bulb moment or like a message incoming. You receive a message of something. But with it being in Pisces and its sign of detriment, it doesn't make sense. There's more confusion. It's like you get information, you get a letter, you get an email, and you're left a little bit more confused, or something is miscommunicated, or something is not clear. Now, this is your second house ruler of money in detriment, the eighth house of other people's resources and debt and death and inheritance. So there seems to be like, oh, you thought you were in one amount of debt and realize you're actually in another amount of debt, and you don't even know how the hell you got there. You don't know how compounding interest works and why you have 25% interest rate on your credit card. But it's also your 11th house ruler of friends. And so this seems like almost like a secret being shared with friends, or something being revealed through a friendship that doesn't really make sense. But it's also the Saturn Kazemi. Now, Saturn does rule your sixth house of work, labor, pets, coworkers, health, and routines. And the sun is conjoining the Saturn, right? Like the sun is your ascendant ruler. This is a big deal. And so this is resetting the topics around your sixth house of work, health, routine, and relationships. This is a newer start in this area, which is interesting given that there's all this relationship stuff happening. Now, I want to explain Saturn and Pisces for just a second. I already did a Saturn and Pisces video. If you haven't watched that already, make sure you check it out if you want to just know more about what Saturn and Pisces means for you. But since March of 2023, Saturn moved into Pisces. And the way I've been trying to explain it is, when Saturn moves into a new sign and is moving into new territory, it's like starting a new job. You're getting on-the-spot training. Saturn's about maturity, discipline, time, limitations, and restrictions. And since March, Saturn has been in your eighth house of other people's money, shared resources, your partner's money. Like the ascendant is you and the second house is your money. The descendant is your partner and the seventh house is their money. So there's been a lot more discipline and restriction and maturity in this area, where there's been like almost like cut off to other people's resources. Or if you're like, that's more of a night chart, or if you're a day chart, this is more of like, you got to be more responsible for other people's stuff. And Saturn moved in March of 23 and moved direct. This is like, again, when you start a new job, you're getting on the spot training. Someone's there, answering all your questions, showing you the ropes. And then from June to November of 2023, Saturn stationed retrograde, where you are now, it is your first couple of days on your own. You do not have anyone there to help you or hold your hand, and you've got to figure things out yourself. You know what your responsibilities and duties are, but you're still trying to figure out, and you're really kind of being tested. You're like doing on the field, like on the spot, figuring it out. And then in November of 2023, up until this point, Saturn stationed direct over the whole area. It was in shadow in, and it moved forward where you're like, all right, I'm comfortable in this new job. I understand my role. I understand what my responsibilities and duties are, and I feel much more better about taking on this area. Once we get to this point, now we're in a second chapter of Saturn and Pisces, which now you are moving on to a new territory of responsibility, maturity, discipline, restrictions. You're being introduced to all of these new things. And again, this is around relationships and other people's money, and work and labor and health and pets and routines around other people's resources, death, taxes, inheritance, and those sort of things. So that whole context gets reset for you once we get to the very end of February. So January is very hustle grind for you guys. February is all relationships. And then we get to March. And by the time we get to March, we have a few things going on. Number one, we have this Mars-Uranus square. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't think it's really that good. I want you guys, again, if you watch this video throughout 2024 and you come back to it, comment below and let me know what ends up happening during this time. But Mars is in your 7th house of relationships, and Uranus is in your 10th house of career. Now, Uranus has been in your 10th house of career since like 2018, so there's been a lot of innovation, freedom, instability, doing new things, technology. But Mars is in your 7th house of relationships. And when we get to March 9th, Mars being in your 7th house of relationships, squaring Uranus, is bringing like a snapping moment, like a breaking point regarding career and relationships. This might have to do with, 4th house topics, home and family, or 9th house, far distance travel, social media, publishing, broadcasting, education related to like a teacher or some sort of a relationship. But this just seems very like chaotic, very like going against the grain, some instability regarding a relationship and career stuff. It's not the biggest deal ever, but this is kind of like a high point of contention to pay attention to. So then we get to Venus moving into Pisces on March 11th. We like this. What I find interesting about this is, again, it's still in your 8th house. So other people's money, death, debt, inheritance, things like that. But Venus is exalted in Pisces. Venus loves to be in Pisces. Venus is about love, romance, sex, connection, indulgence, the finer good things in life. And when she's exalted, she can really have some fun. Now, what's interesting, though, is that she's in your 8th house, which is a very uncomfortable house, and she's with Saturn. And again, Saturn is like where you need to be more disciplined and more mature as of this moment. And what I find about this is like, yeah, you are dealing with more limitations and restrictions and maturity regarding other people's resources, other people's money, both in relationships and in work. But Venus coming in here now is like, there's something fun about it, where it's like, have you ever had a job where, it's just a job at the end of the day, but then you kind of get to a point where like, it's actually kind of fun. I like my job for what it is at this moment. There's something that's much more fun about this. Now, Venus does rule your 10th house of career. And she's going to be in the 8th house of other people's resources and exalted. So your career might do a lot better with other people's resources, with other people's money. And it's also your 3rd ruler of short distance travel, having access to other people's resources to do short distance travel, that sort of thing. So we really like Venus and Pisces this time around because I think it's just going to soften up this whole Saturn transit stuff. So then we get to the 18th of March and Mercury enters shadow. So this really kicks off the craziness of April. Like January's hustle grind, February's all relationships for you. March is just kind of weird. And then April is like, you kind of just have to sit back and let everything happen. So Mercury enters shadow, which means we get to our first Mercury retrograde of the year. It's going to enter shadow in your 9th house, again, of spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel, social media, publishing, broadcasting. And as Mercury enters shadow, there's going to be something that happens on the 18th that you're going to come back to later on in April. And Mercury retrogrades are about delays, rethinking, reviewing, miscommunications, and just kind of like reframing things. And this is in your 9th house of spirituality and religion. So there's like a big reframe in terms of what your beliefs are or what your plans are or how you see the world around you. That begins here on the 18th. But then on the 25th, we get our first eclipse, which is a lunar eclipse in Libra. This is happening on March 25th. Now, this is in your 3rd house of siblings, neighbors, short distance travel. One way I like to break down the 3rd house is like, because I always call the 3rd house like the junk drawer of the chart. And the 3rd house, like, for example, if the 9th house is far distance traveling, the 3rd house is short distance traveling. If the 9th house is higher education, the 3rd house is like primary education. But another way I like to look at it is if the 9th house is like learning and growing, the 3rd house is how do you apply this knowledge? And right now the South Node's going through your 3rd house where there's this kind of like unlearning of things, like unlearning bad habits. And the North Node is in your 9th where there's like this pursuant, like this heavy pursuing of knowledge and wanting to learn more and wanting to grow more. And this lunar eclipse is like a big release of, past knowledge. This is also going to bring up problems with neighbors and siblings. The moon rules your 12th house of hidden enemies, isolation, alienation. And as there's an eclipse, of course, that involves the moon, in your 3rd house of siblings, neighbors, short distance travel, there seems to be some sort of like draining issue happening here. Maybe a problem with siblings, maybe a problem with neighbors, maybe just a general issue with like short distance travel. And so that starts off eclipse season. Eclipse season happens every 6 months, and it's the wildest 2 weeks of every 6 months. And that brings us to April. We start April off on April 1st with our first Mercury retrograde, again, in your 9th house of spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel. So the thing is with this is it's like this lunar eclipse happens in your 3rd house where you kind of realize, oh, I need to unlearn things. I need to redo things. And then Mercury retrograde in your 9th house is like, again, a miscommunication or a delay regarding your belief or, schooling. It's also your 11th house ruler of friends, and it's retrograding in the 9th house of like social media. So I wonder what comes up there. But it's also your 2nd house ruler of money, going retrograde in your 9th house ruler of far distance travel, education. So maybe you're planning on doing a trip. Maybe there's some, maybe it's a trip with friends and it's costing money. and there's some sort of a delay, or you make the big expense and you're kind of like, oh my god, how much money did I spend? Or maybe you're trying to, this is totally a second ruler retrograde of the ninth thing, is like exchanging your dollars for like any other currency. I can't think of a funny currency name at the moment. But this happens. There's some sort of rethinking or reframe or delay or miscommunication regarding far distance travel, higher education, spirituality, religion. Okay? And then that brings us to the solar eclipse in Aries. I would kind of not recommend going to a different country during this time. We don't like eclipses. Eclipses are major doors opening or closing, and I think that's more so for solar eclipses. And this is our first solar eclipse in Aries that we get. And it's still in your ninth house of spirituality, religion, education, and far distance travel. And there seems to be a big door both opening and closing for you regarding your belief system, regarding your worldview, regarding higher education. Maybe you decide to go back to college at this time. Maybe you, again, and Chiron's here. It's like, again, the only thing is I can just lay out the context, and then you have to put the pieces together and what you think it's going to mean for your own life. Because this does rule social media, far distance travel, higher education, spirituality, religion. I think at the minimum, there is a big like worldview shift happening for you here. But what gets crazy is, so we have the solar eclipse. Technically, eclipse season ends at this point. But why this eclipse is so wild is 2 days later, Mars is going to conjoin Saturn. Mars-Saturn conjunctions are typically a big deal in and of themselves. But the fact that we have an eclipse in the sign of Aries, so it's ruled by Mars, and we have Mars conjoining Saturn is like auspicious. Like there's something going on there. And this is again in your eighth house of other people's money, death, debt, and inheritance. Now, it's really weird. Mars conjoins Saturn. Mars rules your ninth house of, again, all of the stuff I've said like 15 times already. And it also rules your fourth house of home and family and living situation. And it's in your eighth house of death. And it's conjoining your seventh house ruler of relationships and your sixth house ruler of, ill health, pets, coworkers. And there just seems to be like a major like lockdown energy. Like you've tried to be responsible with like other people's stuff, but like something is just like you have restricted access and you have to like separate yourself from something. This is kind of a confusing one, to be honest with you, because the eighth house is such a private house that like, when it comes to like other people's money, or like, for example, it's the eighth house of death. Like you don't always really know when you're going to fucking die. Mars conjoining Saturn is at least, some sort of either like separation in relationships or a conflict with the relationship or a conflict with a coworker regarding other people's resources and regarding education, regarding travel, or regarding direction. There seems to be like the easiest way I could put it is April 10th is really, really serious. Like just, it's not fucking around at this time. And plus Mercury's retrograde. But this is what's weird is literally 10 days after that, we get the best transit of the year, specifically for you guys, which is Jupiter conjoining Uranus on 4/20. Easy day to remember. This is in your 10th house of career, reputation, legacy. 9 times out of 10, this is going to be a good transit. But what I have learned in my years of doing astrology is that not every Jupiter transit is amazing and great. Jupiter at the very minimum is about spirituality and faith and belief. And Jupiter's been in your 10th house since May. So Jupiter increases. Jupiter's probably increased your work. You've probably gained some more notoriety in your position, maybe got a better job, maybe more of a position of authority. You've expanded your career. Jupiter rules just like good fortune and abundance, and it rules your fifth house of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, children, and that's been in your 10th house of career. So maybe you've been more creative with your work. Maybe you've been putting more of your creative stuff out there for, as a reputational thing. It's also your 8th house ruler of other people's resources, debt, death, and inheritance in your 10th house of career. So there might be just like a big part of like working with other people's resources as a part of your career. Now, again, 9 times out of 10, Jupiter transits are good. It can be bad though, because sometimes something can happen with Jupiter ingressing that like, because Jupiter rules faith, it's like, okay, you really need to have faith in this area. So it can oftentimes like be a bad thing that then triggers like a journey through faith. But Jupiter's conjoining Uranus, where like the easiest way to look at this is like striking gold. This is like, striking oil, like hitting it big, hitting it rich. Uranus is innovation, freedom, liberation, instability, unpredictable events. It is technology. It is innovative. And it's your fifth ruler. So love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, children. Eighth ruler of other people's money, shared resources. Like it's like all coming together at this point. And so what's hard to delineate this about you guys is like, okay, there's like all this spiritual far distance travel shit. There's all this really heaviness and like super mad responsibility with other people's shit. But then at the same time, like something super epic happens in career. This is why I want you guys to come back to this video and let me know what's going on, because I'm really curious how it's going to look for each individual one of you. And so then we get back to this list, and by the end of the month, Mars ingresses into Aries, and it's in your 9th house. So again, spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel. This is when everything gets cranked up to 11, because the big thing here is the North Node is in your 9th house. So there is this there's this hunger, there's this urge and this drive to learn, to grow, to travel, to broadcast, to put yourself out there. And when Mars enters Aries, Mars is in its domicile, so it's working really well. Mars being with the North Node, again, just cranks all that Mars stuff up to 11. Now, when I always talk about like Mars in the 9th house is kind of like shaking your fist at God, like being frustrated or angry with your beliefs or your worldview. But it's also like, part of me is like, it's your 4th ruler of living situation in the 9th house of different countries. Maybe you're moving, maybe you're traveling a lot more. And while Mars going through your 9th house, like if Mars causes inflammation and fighting and stuff like that, that could be bad. It's like it's Mars in domicile and it's Mars in the North Node. It's like it will be very fiery, but it will be very ambitious and fun too. And so the way I would look at this too is that there's a very heavy pursuit for, again, knowledge, traveling, all that stuff, like really wanting to go after it at this time. So then we get to May. Now, May is the best month of the year. I think especially for you guys, I think May is going to be your favorite. But before I talk about all of this stuff, I want to show you something. If we look at May, this is May 1st here. Look at what's going on in your 10th house of career. We have Venus in your 10th house of career, rules your 10th house of career. We have the sun here, and we have Jupiter here, and Uranus. Uranus can be a malefic or a benefic, but I think when it's paired with Venus and Jupiter, it's probably going to act more benefic than anything. A lot of good energy going on with the career at this time. Like things are solid, things are growing. I don't want to say things are stable. I don't think that's the correct word. But like there's some sort of security here. I just think you guys are going to do really good with career and work stuff during May. So we really like that. But let's go back to this list. Mercury leaves shadow on the 13th. So again, Mercury goes into shadow like on March, like 13th. It's retrograde most of April. Then by the time we get to May, the middle of May, it finally leaves. So we're all done on this reflection of your beliefs or problems with money related to travel or friends related to travel and education and things like that. But then we get to the 19th, and this is when Mars conjoins the North Node. Again, this is when things are cranked up to 11. Fights and conflicts, traveling, your beliefs. Like part of it is like, it's very like Mars in Aries in the 9th is very like warrior, spiritual warrior mentality. And again, so part of it's shaking your fist at God, but the other part of it is just like super just tapping in and being like extreme about it. The easiest way to look at it is you're going to feel very extreme. You're going to feel very pursuant. You want to use that energy. You want to harness it, but you got to know sometimes when to back down on certain things. Like, you know, if your car can go 100 miles an hour, or I shouldn't say, let's say it could go 200 miles an hour. Well, you should find a time and place to take it to that limit, but you don't need to be going 200 miles an hour on every single street and at every single turn. It's not going to work. So know when to calm down here, especially related to travel and publishing and broadcasting. There's just a lot of action happening here. But then we get to the 25th, and this is when Jupiter ingresses into Gemini. Now, if you don't know already, Jupiter moves into a new zodiac sign once every year. The last time Jupiter was in Gemini was about spring of summer of 2012. What was that time like for you regarding friends? Because Jupiter is going to go into your 11th house of friends, networks, and community. Again, Jupiter expands, and Jupiter brings good fortune and abundance in your 11th house of friends, but it's in detriment. The problem with the detriment part is, like, it's not doing all that well. Not, everybody is your friend. You might be expanding these friends. Oh no, whoops, push the wrong button. Let's go way back here. For those listening, sorry, I'm trying to get the chart up here correctly. So Jupiter's going to your 11th house of friends. It's going to expand it, but it's like Jupiter and Gemini is trying to do two things. It's trying to have its cake and eat it too. And that's over this year, you're going to learn that that's not possible. And that's what we're going to be learning when Jupiter squares Saturn in August and December. But for right now, there's like expansion and a lot more socializing going on with 11th house of friends. Now, it is your fifth ruler of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, and hobbies and children. Now, the thing I like to look at with the fifth house is what you do for fun, and the 11th house is who you do it with. But your fifth ruler of what you do for fun is in detriment in the 11th house of who you do it with. So it's like maybe you have a hobby, but you don't have any friends to do it with, or the friends that you're doing things with, you don't really always agree on like the hobbies or getting together with things. Or you're trying to blend, like it's like that Seinfeld episode, like galaxies are colliding, like you're bringing in two friend groups together. But Jupiter also rules your 8th house of other people's resources, debts, death, taxes, inheritance. And that's going into your 11th house where there's like some sort of group expansion related to recreation, fun, creativity, and other people's resources. So that looks good. I would just say enjoy it because it just looks like you're going to be doing a lot of socializing once we get to the very beginning of June. But that brings us to June. And the first thing that we have going on is on June 4th, we have the Venus Cazimi in Gemini. This is happening again in your 11th house of friends, networks, and community. So I want you to think about what was going on with friends in summer of 2012, because that's when Jupiter ingressed into Gemini last. But I want you to think about what was going on in about June of 2016. Because in about June of 2016 was the last time we had a Venus Cazimi in Gemini. Now, Venus goes retrograde in the same zodiac sign every 8 years, and she goes Cazimi in the same zodiac sign every 8 years. So 8 years ago, June of 2016, was there a new beginning with friends? Did you start hanging out more with people because of your location? Because Venus does rule your 3rd house of short distance travel and neighbors and like your local community, but it also rules your 10th house of career. And it's, in your 11th house of friends going Cazimi, where this just seems like a new start. And Mercury's in Gemini conjoining Jupiter. That just looks like by the beginning of June, you're doing a lot of socializing. You're hanging out with people. It's a lot of fun. I really, really, really like June for the social part of your life, especially given what friends must have been like from October, November, December of 2022 and January, February, March of 2023. That was all probably drama and bad. This is like night and day. I think you'll really like this. Then after that, on June 8th, Mars enters Taurus. Again, so 10th house of career, reputation, legacy. This is where some problems start. Things really slow down in the career area for you, which may or may not be bad because things were going a million miles an hour before this. But Mars is fights, conflicts, inflammation. Mars is in detriment in Taurus, so it's like very stubborn, very slow moving, very just like, I don't want to do this. You think about like July of 2022, that was the last time we had Mars going through Taurus. So there would have been like, if you were frustrated or your work or things were moving slow, that was the last time. Mars also rules your 4th house of home and family and living situation, and it's in detriment in your 10th house of career. So it's like maybe you can't visit your family, or you need, like, you're ignoring problems with family or living situation because you have to deal with work stuff. That's a way to look at it. And it's also your 9th ruler of like education, travel, and it's in detriment in the 10th house of career. Like maybe you can't do all the summer plans you want to because of work stuff. Then we get the Mercury Cazimi, and that's on June 14th. And again, this is in the 11th house of friends and networks and communities. And this is like just really restarting friends, because like Jupiter going into your 11th house expands the friendships. The Venus Cazimi changes the relationships or the kind of friends that you have given your career and like your community. And then Mercury, which actually rules your 11th house of friendships, goes Cazimi, where it's just like big new start in friends. You're making a lot of friends. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we like all of that. But then on the 30th, this is when Saturn stations retrograde. And like I said before, Saturn's been moving direct. You've been being introduced to new responsibilities, and you've been introduced to new, where you need to be more mature, where you need to be more, what new limitations or restrictions or constraints you are going to have regarding, again, work, labor, and relationships. and their resources, like that you are responsible over. Like these are the new constraints, these are the new limitations. As Saturn goes retrograde, this is again the difference between the classroom work and the field work. As Saturn goes retrograde, it's like, okay, you're a little bit more on your own now. You're going to have to figure things out for yourself, and you're going to have to kind of suck it up and, figure out how to manage chaotic situations. And there is some sort of a backwards movement feeling happening here. With Saturn ruling your 6th house of work and routine, as well as your 7th house of relationships, you're going to see these two areas of your life really make a switch. Like work, labor, routine, schedule, and your 7th house of relationships just like starting to move backwards, starting to be like, okay, this isn't about moving forward. And that's okay. You just got to honor the time. It's about going back, like retracing your steps. What has happened in between, January and then, and what do you need to, be better at being more mature and more disciplined in certain areas of life. Okay. Plus, this is like Cancer season. Everything's in your 12th house. You're a little bit more isolated and alienated at this point in the year anyway. So that brings us to July. Okay. July, August, September, and even October are so much more boring compared to the first 6 months of the year. The first 6 of the months of the year have all the action. This is when things pretty much slow down, except we do get this Mars-Uranus conjunction on July 15th. This is happening in your 10th house of career, reputation, and legacy. Again, think about August 1st, 2022. This is the last time we had a Mars-Uranus conjunction. Now, that also had the North Node, so that arguably could have been worse. But Mars conjoining Uranus in your 10th house is like instability, a big shakeup, a big, dramatic moment where just like an unearthing occurs. Again, Mars rules your 4th house, living situation, home, family, 9th house, social media, publishing, broadcasting, spirituality, fires to travel, education, and just Mars conjoining Uranus is again just like a big shakeup and a big where you want things to be stable, they are not. Like it's like stepping on an IED, stepping on a landmine essentially, and things just really get shaken up. Probably the worst day for work stuff, in my opinion. Oh no, there we go. So beware of that. Then we get to sorry, I said, oh no, not for you guys, but because I'm using my iPad, my stupid mouse like connected to my iPad and I couldn't get out of it. So sorry. But then we get to July 16th, the next day, and we have Mercury ingressing into shadow. So between July and August, Mercury is going to retrograde in Virgo. Virgo rules your 2nd house of money. So that Mercury retrograde is going to be all about like, reorganizing finances. But it will also retrograde in your 1st house of your body, yourself, your image, your identity. And so Mercury going into shadow in your 1st house of the body related to your 11th house of friends and your 2nd house of money is kind of like, okay, you might miscommunicate something regarding friends, or you might spend some money on yourself, on your body or your looks or your wardrobe that makes you kind of have to start recalculating your finances later on. But this all begins on July 16th. And then Mars goes into Gemini on July 20th. Again, 11th house of friends, networks, and communities. Here's the issue with that. So you had all this fun socializing, right? It was a good time, but then that starts to go away. The last time Mars was in Gemini was between September of 2022 all the way through March of 2023. It's been a long time there. Now, that was arguably a lot worse, but you get the idea. There was probably fights, conflicts, going back and forth with friends, and drama. Mars going into your 11th house will be fights and conflicts and more energy regarding friends, community, and networking. Pay attention to that because that will be important for when we start talking about August. So we get to August and we have Mercury stationing retrograde on August 5th in your 2nd house of money. So again, this is a Mercury retrograde in Virgo. This is kind of bringing us back to like August of 2023, like reorganizing your finances, a delay or a slowdown with money. Having to just kind of reorganize things essentially. But then we have the Mars-Jupiter conjunction on August 14th. And this is a big blow up. Like, in my opinion, this is a lot of drama with other people. Let's do this real quick. August 14th. Move this back here. Because again, Mars not only rules, like, again, your 9th house, so spirituality, religion, and your 4th ruler of home and family. It's conjoining Jupiter, your 5th ruler of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, hobbies, drugs, alcohol, vices, and your 8th house ruler of like other people's resources, death, debt, and inheritance. And so Mars conjoined Jupiter just seems to be a big blow up in friendships, doing a lot at once. Like Jupiter and Gemini is trying to juggle two things, and then Mars comes in and it's like, okay, while you're juggling, try to dodge traffic, essentially. And so there seems to be a major blow up here. And what's important about this blow up is this happens on the 14th. And then 5 days later on the 19th, we get that big meta transit that I talked about, and that's the Jupiter-Saturn square. And that happens in your 11th house of friends and your 8th house of other people's resources. So like I was saying, when we talk about this, it's like this blow up needs to happen because then 5 days later, we have that Jupiter-Saturn square where Jupiter rules, again, love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, children, and it's also rules your 8th house of other people's resources, debts, death, taxes, inheritance, but it's squaring Saturn, which rules your 6th house of work, labor, routines, coworkers, pets, and it also rules your 7th house of relationships. And so the big thing here is like Jupiter and Gemini is like trying to seize an opportunity, trying to take an opportunity, trying to have your cake and eat it too. But as it squares Saturn, it's like you've just got shit to be responsible over. And there's some responsibility factor that comes in here where now Saturn's retrograde and you're like, how do I enjoy this thing? How do I take this opportunity? What are my beliefs about friends? And how does that reflect what I need to be responsible over? Where do I need to be mature? It's also Saturn, your 7th ruler. It's like, maybe you like the group, but not a specific individual. And so Jupiter, like this is kind of the moment where you realize Jupiter's in detriment, essentially. Like Jupiter's going to be fun for the couple months leading up to this. And then this is where you go, oh yeah, Jupiter's in detriment. I can't have my cake and eat it too. How do I still take care of this, this opportunity, enjoy it while also balancing out what restrictions I have and where I need to be more disciplined and more conservative? That's going to become important as we start, talking about the rest of the year, more specifically December. But now let's move into September. Pluto moves back into Capricorn. Good old Pluto in Capricorn. Haven't missed it. It's been there for 16 years. We get Pluto in Capricorn for 2 months. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You know the fucking deal. Like, it's going back into your 6th house of work, routine, pets, all that good stuff. Okay. But then we get Venus conjoining the South Node on September 3rd. So Venus will be in your 3rd house of siblings, neighbors, short distance travel. Like I said before, Venus rules your 10th house of career. She'll be in her domicile sign in the 3rd house of, again, short distance travel, neighbors, all that good stuff. But it's bittersweet. Something's ending here. Like Venus and Libra conjoining the South Node is like, this is nice, but I don't like this anymore. I don't like my neighborhood. I don't like my siblings anymore. I don't like, doing all of this short distance traveling. Like it's a lot of fun, but it's exhausting and I'm tired of it. I need to move on and do something different. That's the vibe for Venus conjoining the South Node on September 3rd. And then that brings us to September 4th. Mars moves into Cancer. Mars is going to be in Cancer back and forth for a while. It's not there permanently, but we don't get, Mars leaving shadow till like March or May of 2025. But Mars will move into Cancer on September 4th. And this rules your 12th house of isolation, the subconscious, hidden enemies, self-sabotage, repressed, unacknowledged parts of yourself. And again, Mars rules your home, your family, your living situation, and it's fallen. Mars doesn't like to be in Cancer. Mars is about fighting and conflicts, and Cancer is about like babies and nurturing and being safe. And Mars in Cancer is so much more defensive. Like it's not on the offense, it's on the defense. It's on the protective. It's like mama bear. And so your 9th ruler of beliefs and worldview and religion and publishing and broadcasting is going to enter its fall in your 12th house where you may not be energized. You might have some like fears and being very reclusive and being very insecure about, just the way things are going in your worldview. And I want you to think about April of 2023. That was the last time Mars was in Cancer. What was going on in April of 2023? How did you feel, especially related to your home and your family and your living situation? Because Mars rules your home and your family and living situation, and it's fallen in your 12th house of isolation, alienation. Were you going through something with your family that you didn't like? Did you feel isolated from your family? Did you not like your living situation? Like you couldn't get any privacy, or that you had to like recluse just to get any sort of sense of control? Did you need more of that privacy to like relax and heal? That's the vibe for a while. That brings us to October. Hold on, I need a water break. So once we get to October, we get into eclipse season again. We get a solar eclipse on October 2nd. Again, this is in your third house of siblings, neighbors, short distance travel. Just think about October 13th, 14th of 2023 and what shifted for you, again, with short distance travel, siblings, neighbors, aunts, uncles, cousins. Did something from the past get brought up? Because that's something the South Node does. And what needed to be let go? What needed to be released? What needed to shift? Because that's exactly what this is essentially. And we start another eclipse season. And, again, eclipse season is kind of the wildest time. 2 days later on October 4th, Mars ingresses into shadow. It's still in your 12th house of isolation, the subconscious, and hidden enemies. So really pay attention to this time, because whatever's going on when Mars enters shadow, you're going to come back to in like March of 2025. And this is why I was trying to say, like 2024 is the buildup for 2025. Like, I feel like 2024 is like January through like August, and then the rest of the year is like pre-2025, because so much happens in 2025 in that even though we're at the end of the year, we like so much just pours into 2025. But again, Mars has fallen in your 12th. Venus is in detriment in your 4th. There's a lot of family, death, living situation, parent stuff going on here that's really uncomfortable. But I'd pay attention to October 4th when Mars enters shadow, especially related to family and living situation, just being alone and being crabby and, needing to take care of yourself, because that's going to become very relevant by the time we get to February, March of 2025. And then Jupiter stations retrograde on October 9th. This is, again, in your 11th house of friends, networks, community. And this is, again, the same thing. Jupiter in being direct in your 11th house of friends is expanding all of your friends. And then when Jupiter goes retrograde, it's like all of that good luck and fortune kind of goes away. And it's not that like, oh, you're going to lose all your friends. It's just maybe you're not being as social. I mean, there's a lot of isolation stuff going on here. Plus the sun, which is your ascendant ruler, is in Libra where it's fallen. So like you're just generally lower energy. But as Jupiter goes retrograde, there's kind of this, what do I believe about my friends? What do I believe about like the things that I enjoy? What do I believe about things like death and other people's resources, and what opportunities do I have? And again, this is kind of like Jupiter in Gemini is like, it's super easy, or I should say Jupiter being direct. It's like, it's super easy to have faith in something when everything's going your way. But when everything's not going your way, do you still have faith? Do you still believe in that? Do you? And Jupiter going retrograde is the same thing as like Saturn going retrograde, in the sense of like Jupiter being direct from like January to literal October is the classroom work. It's easy, but you get into the field work and you realize what some of the problems are. And this is you just reflecting on your beliefs and your experiences with friends and networks over the past, in communities over the past couple months. And then we get to, okay, so I might have fucked up. This may not be an eclipse on October 17th, this lunar eclipse in Aries, but I'm going to count it anyway, because I think it's still important. In your 9th house of spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel. And I'm going to explain why I think it's important. I think by this point, we start getting our eclipses in the 8th house and 2nd house. But I think that's going to be more relevant for 2025, because I'll explain why next year when I make these videos. But when we get to this, what we'll call full moon, it's your 12th ruler of like self-sabotage, hidden enemies, the subconscious, fears, phobias, in your 9th house of beliefs. And it's your 9th ruler of beliefs in fallen in your 12th house of self-sabotage, hidden enemies, being isolated. And so there's this kind of tense moment where you're just kind of like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why is things going this way? Why do I believe in this? Why aren't things working? And, woe is me kind of energy. But this is going to bring back up all of the stuff that happened in April. And again, so really pay attention to April, because it will become relevant by the time we get to October. And that brings us to November. We start November off with Mars going into Leo. Okay, I think you are going to feel better at this point, but that's going to be short-lived, and let me explain why. Mars is about fights and conflicts and energy. It's going to Leo, where Mars in Leo is like, you say it with your chest. Like, again, people hate that I bring this up as like an example, but like Donald Trump is a Leo rising with Mars and Leo in the 1st house. Like, that is the perfect encapsulation of Mars and Leo in the 1st house. Like, it doesn't matter if it's wrong. It doesn't matter if it sounds bad. He has no second thought on what he says, because whatever he says in his mind is the best. that's sometimes you got to embody that. Like you're a Leo rising. You can't act like you don't want to embody that sometimes. And like Mars and Leo is the time to do that. But that comes with a caveat. And so we'll talk about that. So Mars goes into Leo. You will feel more aggravated, more frustrated, but you will be a little bit more like loud and proud and just saying shit with your chest and not so low energy and insecure little baby, but more prideful, more like arrogant, more confident. Mercury goes into shadow on November 7th. And Mercury is going to go into your 5th house of creativity, love, children, sex, hobbies, art, music. Mercury will retrograde here. So there's going to be another reflection, another review, another delay regarding love, romance, sex, art, music, recreation, children, hobbies. And as Mercury goes into shadow on the 7th, you're going to know what this is about. Now, this one's really interesting because, again, Mercury is in Sagittarius and Jupiter is in Gemini. So this will be this like whole trying to rebalance friends and recreational activities and hobbies with friends during this time. But it's also your 2nd house ruler of money being in detriment in the 5th. So like spending more money on partying, spending more money on going to the club and all that kind of good stuff that's going to come up very relevantly. We'll talk about it. On the 19th, Pluto goes into Aquarius, your 7th house ruler of relationships, partners. We come back to this whole power dynamic thing with relationships, and it's staying there. Now, what's important about this is from November of 2024 to July of 2025, every major planet is moving into a new zodiac sign. Pluto moves into Aquarius, Neptune moves into Aries, Uranus moves into Gemini, Saturn moves into Aries, and then Jupiter moves into Cancer. So this is the beginning of like major shift after major shift after major shift that's happening. And then by this time on November 15th, I know these two dates are crossed over. I just talked about November 19th. Now I'm talking about November 15th, but I think you get the point. Saturn stations direct. Now we know how to be responsible over other people's stuff. It's like Pluto moves into your 7th house, your 7th ruler moves direct. Relationships and work stuff really start to feel like they're moving forward and you feel more comfortable and in like, just feel better about what is yours, what you have to be responsible over, where you need to mature, where you need to grow up, where you need to take responsibility. That's the big thing. And then, of course, by November 25th, Mercury stations retrograde in your 5th house. So this is delays and miscommunications and replanning and rethinking your beliefs and your thoughts about, you know, love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, children even. And the big thing here is what's so interesting about this retrograde to me is, again, Mercury is in Sagittarius, Jupiter sign, and Jupiter is in Gemini, Mercury sign. So they're opposite and they're both in detriment, where there's this kind of like your 5th ruler's in detriment and the 11th. So it's like you're not having fun because of the people that you're with, but then also the planet that rules the people that you're with is like in detriment of the 5th house, where it's like, they don't do the thing that you're into. And so there's this kind of like crisscross action going on here where you're kind of going like, okay, what the fuck am I doing like with these people? And what do I actually think is fun? And a lot of this has to do with money, but this is also like just reflections about what do you want in life? What do you want to create? It will be a delay. It will be a slowdown, like a typical Mercury retrograde, but I think it has more to do with the friendship stuff and like what brings you guys together. We get to December and Mars stations retrograde on December 6th in your 1st house of your body, yourself, your image, your identity. So here's the deal with this. This is very cowardly lion vibes. This is very tail between your legs vibes. And that's okay. It's just the time. I think Mars in Cancer is like we're feeling like the way I've been trying to explain this is Mars in Cancer is feeling crabby and, you know, stage fright, nervousness. And then Mars goes into Leo where you're on stage, you're having a good time. And then something happens that's really embarrassing and you have your tail tucked between your legs and you go and hide away. And, you know, Mars is also your 4th ruler of home and family and living situation, retrograde in your 1st house, where this is just kind of like a big slowdown. Like, again, maybe you being more aggravated or you being more distant from your family. Same thing with your 9th ruler going retrograde in the 1st. Like, this is a real big call out with your beliefs. Like, hey, who are you? Like, are you that motherfucker that you say that you are? And this is something that we have a lot to explore with in 2025 and 2026. Like the winter of 24 sucks. 2025 is kick ass in my opinion. But we end 2024 with this Mars retrograde in Leo where it is your tail tucked between your legs. It is a lack of confidence. It is like getting your balls cut off essentially. There's a lack of confidence. There's a fear. There's a all bark, no bite sort of a deal. And I think you're just going to have a low sense of confidence at this point and needing to retreat and go backwards a little bit. And that's okay. We just have to honor the time. Mercury stations direct on December 16th. So again, we get all of this whole friends stuff worked out, and there's no more delays and money stuff happening with creativity, love, children, hobbies. But then we get to the last transit on not New Year's, Christmas Eve, and that's the Jupiter square Saturn transit. Again, this is what we had in August. There's a big difference with this one, though. In August, Jupiter was direct and Saturn was retrograde. Where, like I said, it's like Jupiter being, direct and Saturn being retrograde is like, I want to take on this opportunity and do all these things, like have my cake and eat it too, but I've got all these responsibilities I'm still learning to try to manage. This is the opposite. This is like Saturn is direct. It's like, hey, I've got these responsibilities I must manage. And because of that, like, I'm going to have to rethink how I take advantage of these opportunities with friends and networks and communities. So that might have to be saying no. And that might also just be realizing, like, again, Jupiter in your 11th house is great for expanding friends, but it's not always the best for like that always working out. And so this will kind of come back. This will be whatever goes on in August with that whole thing again, with friends and relationships and other people's resources and partying and coworkers. There's just a big part of that for one, it goes down in August, and then in December you kind of come back to it and you handle it in a more mature way. And then again, we get a third Jupiter Saturn square in 2025, but that's not until I believe July, and it's going to be Saturn in Aries and Jupiter in Cancer. So it's a whole fucking different story. But that's what I got for you guys this year. That's 2024. Let me know in the comments below what you're most excited for, what you're not looking forward to. Again, make sure you like this video if you really enjoyed it. It does actually help out the channel, and comment helps out too. If you want to keep up to date with all of the transits throughout the year, subscribe. That also helps it out. Again, if you want to keep up to date with all of the transits hitting your birth chart specifically, go over to my website, download the iCalendar and the Google Calendar that I have. It's only $20. It's very specific, and it's specifically tailored to your chart. Or just reach out to book a consultation with me. And with that being said, I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next time.